The night sky hung heavy over the city as thunder cracked in the distance, and Daniel said, "It's over. Everything I built is gone." He stood in the center of his empty office, staring at boxes stacked like gravestones. The blinds swayed from the open window, carrying with them the echoes of his past triumphs. His voice broke as he whispered, "I gave my soul to this company, and they ripped it from me." His reflection in the glass seemed like a stranger, a shadow of the confident man he once was. Investors had fled, partners betrayed him, and the market crushed what little hope remained. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the hum of fluorescent lights above his head. He clenched his fists, remembering promises he made to his team and to himself. "Well." His chest tightened as he whispered, "How do I tell them it's all gone?" Outside, rain lashed against the windows, washing the streets below, as if mocking his defeat. Daniel said, "I can't let this be the end, but maybe I'm already finished." The next morning, Daniel walked through the streets like a ghost, his suit rumpled, tie loosened, and briefcase dangling loosely in his grip. He said, "They'll see me as a failure, nothing more than a broken dreamer." The cold morning air stung his face. Yet he welcomed the numbness. Around him, businessmen rushed past, polished and sharp, while he felt like a relic of yesterday's promise. His shoes splashed in puddles as rain still clung to the streets, a reminder of last night's storm. He thought of the calls he ignored, the messages piling up, and the team waiting for answers he couldn't give. His heart pounded as he whispered, "Do I tell them the truth or give them hope?" The city, alive with ambition, seemed indifferent to his suffering. Daniel paused at a corner cafe, staring through the glass at young professionals laughing, their lives untouched by collapse. He envied them, yet something in him sparked, a faint fire that refused to die. Daniel returned home to an apartment stripped of warmth, where unpaid bills sat piled on the table. He dropped his briefcase and muttered, "This isn't living, it's drowning." The silence of the room pressed down on him like an iron weight. He touched a photograph of his younger self with his parents, smiling with a fire in his eyes. "What would they think of me now?" he whispered. The fridge hummed faintly, echoing his emptiness. He sank into the couch, head falling back, eyes shut tight against the weight of failure. Every memory of sacrifice clawed at him. Late nights, missed birthdays, friendships left to wither. His phone buzzed, but he didn't reach for it. He said, "I can't face them, not yet." The city's glow filtered weakly through blinds, casting fractured light across his face. His world had collapsed, and all he had left was the suffocating quiet. Later that evening, Daniel met his closest friend, Mark, at a dimly lit bar. Mark said, "You look like hell, Daniel." Daniel forced a bitter laugh. "That's generous." The bar smelled of old wood and whiskey, laughter from strangers filling the gaps between their silence. Mark leaned closer, his voice firm. "You can't give up now. You've come too far." Daniel shook his head. "I've lost everything. The investors, the company, even myself." Mark slammed his glass down, frustration seeping into his tone. "No, you haven't lost me, and you haven't lost your vision." Daniel stared at the amber liquid in his glass, reflections of neon signs swirling within. He whispered, "But vision doesn't pay the bills." The weight of despair clashed with the fragile spark of loyalty, two forces tugging at Daniel's soul. Daniel walked home under the heavy drizzle, his thoughts a storm of regret and fear. Streetlights cast long shadows on the wet pavement, each step echoing the emptiness in his chest. He said, "How do you rebuild when everything's shattered?" He pulled his coat tighter, but no fabric could shield him from the weight he carried. Passing closed shops, he caught his reflection in the glass, drenched and weary, a man who had given everything and received ruin in return. A stray dog padded alongside him briefly, then vanished into an alley, leaving Daniel lonelier than before. He stopped beneath a flickering street lamp, staring into the night as though waiting for an answer. His heart whispered that he couldn't quit, but his mind screamed that he was finished. Rain mixed with tears, indistinguishable on his face. Daniel sat at his desk the next morning, the blinds half open, sunlight fighting through the dust-filled air. He whispered, "Yesterday broke me, but today demands answers. His journal lay open, filled with scribbles of hope and regret. He traced old notes about expansion plans, the words mocking him like relics of a dream. He closed his eyes, remembering when belief burned bright, when nothing seemed impossible. "I was fearless once," he muttered, shaking his head. "I?" The silence of his apartment pressed against him, suffocating yet oddly grounding. He thought of his parents' sacrifices and the risks he had taken to honor them. A pang of guilt struck him as he imagined their pride turned to disappointment. He whispered, "Maybe I'm not the man I thought I was." But as he stared at the blank page ahead of him, a flicker of defiance lit his chest. "Or maybe I'm not finished yet." Later that afternoon Mark arrived, his voice loud enough to fill the silence. "Daniel, you need to stop hiding in this cave." Daniel smirked weakly. "And go where? To beg for scraps?" Mark sat on the edge of the desk, his presence grounding. He said, "You've built before, you can build again." Daniel rubbed his face, his voice heavy. "I can't carry the weight anymore. It's crushing me." Mark leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "Then let me carry some of it. You're not alone, even if you act like it." Daniel's chest tightened, the loyalty cutting through his despair. He whispered, "Why do you still believe in me?" Mark grinned faintly, "Because I know the man who refuses to quit is still in there." Daniel looked away, struggling between gratitude and shame, caught in the fragile balance of loyalty and broken pride. That evening, Daniel sat across from his sister Emily, in their childhood kitchen. Emily said, "You're killing yourself with this dream." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It's not just a dream, it's my life's work." Emily folded her arms, frustration clear. "Your life's work is tearing you apart." He stared at the chipped counter, remembering meals where hope once filled the room. His voice cracked, "Do you think I'm a fool?" Emily softened, her tone breaking. "I think you're stubborn, and I think you've forgotten how to live." Daniel shook his head, guilt rising. "I can't quit, Emily. If I do, what's left of me?" She reached across the table, her hand hovering before pulling back, torn between love and fear. Their silence carried a weight heavier than words, the clash of family concern and relentless ambition. Back at the office ruins, Daniel unlocked the dusty door to retrieve what little was left. Sarah, the quiet employee who rarely spoke, stood waiting by the entrance. Daniel frowned. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" She lowered her gaze, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't walk away without saying thank you." Daniel's chest tightened. "Thank you? For what?" Sarah hesitated, then said, "For believing in me when no one else did. You gave me a chance." He swallowed hard, the weight of failure gnawing at him. "I feel like I let everyone down." Sarah shook her head gently. "Not me. I'll always remember what you built, even if it's gone." Daniel's silence spoke louder than words, her loyalty sparking the faintest reminder of why he started. That night, Daniel sat across from his mentor, Richard, in a quiet cafe with soft jazz humming in the background. Richard said, "You're letting failure define you, Daniel." Daniel sipped his coffee slowly, his voice low. "It already has." Richard leaned back, his eyes sharp. "Nonsense. Failure is a teacher, not a coffin." Daniel clenched his jaw. "But what if I don't have the strength to start again?" Richard leaned forward, his voice firm. "Then borrow strength until you find your own." Daniel stared at him, torn between exhaustion and hope. "And if I lose again?" Richard smiled faintly, his wrinkles deepening. "Then you'll rise again because that's who you are." The words cut through Daniel's despair, planting the seed of resilience he thought was gone. Daniel stood outside the skyscraper of his fiercest rival, a towering reminder of everything he had lost. He muttered, "Ethan won't stop until I'm buried." Ethan had always been ruthless, but now he thrived on Daniel's collapse. The glass facade reflected Daniel's worn figure, mocking him with its perfection. Inside, Ethan was hosting an event, shaking hands with investors who had once cheered for Daniel. He whispered, "They switched sides so easily, like loyalty was for sale." His chest burned as memories of rejection piled in his mind. He thought of Mark's words, of Richard's advice, and wondered if he had the strength to face this monster. The sound of applause inside made him clench his fists. "I won't let him erase me," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. For the first time, his anger was stronger than his despair. The next morning, Daniel sat in a tense meeting with Olivia, his investor. She said, "You're hanging by a thread, Daniel. Convince me why I should stay." Daniel straightened, though fatigue weighed him down. "Because I still have the vision that can change this market." Olivia leaned back, arms crossed, eyes sharp as steel. "Vision doesn't pay dividends, numbers do." His throat tightened, but he refused to flinch. "Give me time. I'll prove it." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Time is money. And right now, you have neither." The silence between them pulsed with pressure. Daniel exhaled, whispering, "Walk away if you must, but don't say I lacked the will." Olivia's gaze softened for a moment, then hardened again, leaving him unsure if her faith remained. That evening, Daniel returned to his apartment to find his business partner, Jason, waiting at the door. Jason said, "We need to talk." Daniel's stomach sank, his voice cautious. "About what?" Jason smiled faintly, too calm. "Opportunities you're not seeing." Inside, Jason paced the room, his tone persuasive. "You're dragging this ship down. I can take it somewhere else, but you need to step aside." Daniel froze, betrayal piercing deeper than failure ever had. "You'd betray everything we built?" Jason shrugged. "I'd save what's left." Daniel's fists trembled at his sides. "No, you'd steal it." Jason's smirk confirmed what Daniel already feared. He whispered, "So it's true. You were never with me." Silence thickened, leaving only the sound of Daniel's ragged breath and the sting of betrayal filling the air. The following day, Daniel walked into what he hoped would be a lifeline meeting, only to watch the deal collapse before his eyes. The client said, "We can't risk tying ourselves to you right now." Daniel forced a smile, his voice cracking. "You won't regret staying." The client shook his head, sliding the contract back across the table. "It's not personal. It's business." The words echoed like a hammer against Daniel's ribs. He said, "Everything I've built rests on this," but the client was already walking away. Alone in the room, Daniel stared at the unsigned papers, his chest heavy with shame. He whispered, "How many more losses can I take before I disappear completely?" The silence that followed was louder than rejection itself, suffocating his last fragments of hope. That night, Daniel sat in darkness, the only light from the city skyline seeping through his window. He whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I was never enough." His reflection in the glass stared back with hollow eyes. He thought of his sacrifices, the people who still believed in him, and the betrayals that cut deepest. The weight of failure pressed like an iron cage, and for a moment he imagined letting it all end. His heart pounded, his chest heaving with the conflict between surrender and survival. Then Richard's words echoed in his mind, "Failure is a teacher, not a coffin." Daniel gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles white, whispering, "I'm not finished yet." It was fragile, almost broken, but the first spark of fight in days flickered within him. Daniel stormed into the office late at night, his chest heaving as he dug through Jason's desk. "I knew it," he muttered, pulling out files marked with Ethan's name. Jason hadn't just doubted him, he had fed their rival every detail of their plan. The betrayal burned like acid, every page he turned slicing deeper into his trust. He whispered, "You sold me out." Memories of late nights, shared victories, and brotherhood crumbled in an instant. His heart raced as footsteps echoed behind him. Jason's voice filled the silence, cool and unashamed. "You were too weak to survive." Daniel turned, his face shadowed by fury and disbelief. "You destroyed us for your pride." Jason smirked. "No, Daniel. I saved myself." The weight of treachery crushed Daniel's chest, leaving him gasping for air. Daniel's voice cracked as he shouted, "We built this together. How could you throw it away?" Jason stepped forward, calm and venomous. "But you were dragging us into ruin." Ethan offered survival. Daniel's hands shook as he pointed at the files. Survival without honor is surrender. Jason's smirk didn't falter. Honor doesn't pay the bills. Daniel's anger broke into grief. I trusted you more than anyone. For a fleeting moment, Jason's mask cracked, but his voice remained cold. Trust is weakness, Daniel. I chose strength. Silence stretched, heavy with betrayal, until Daniel whispered, No, you chose greed. Jason turned away, leaving Daniel crushed among the ruins of his faith. The office that once held dreams now reeked of betrayal. The next morning, Daniel met Richard at the cafe, his voice breaking as he said, Jason sold me out. Richard leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Betrayal is part of this world, Daniel. The question is, what will you do with it? Daniel clenched his jaw, shame and rage boiling inside. I don't know if I can fight anymore. Richard's tone was stern. Then you've already lost. Daniel looked down, fighting tears, whispering, Why does everyone I trust turn on me? Richard softened. Not everyone. Some still believe in you. But they need to see that you believe in yourself first. Daniel felt the weight of Richard's words dig into him like iron. For the first time, he realized the choice was his alone. Later that day, Olivia confronted Daniel with sharp words. Your partner sabotaged you, and now you want me to keep investing? Daniel met her gaze, exhausted but defiant. Yes, because my vision is bigger than his betrayal. Olivia arched an eyebrow. Vision without trust is suicide. Daniel's voice steadied, Then trust me, not him. Her silence stretched as she weighed his resolve. She finally said, If I stay, it will be because of your resilience, not your numbers. Daniel exhaled, relief mingling with fear. Then I'll show you resilience you've never seen before. In her eyes, doubt lingered, but a flicker of respect had been born. Alone that night, Daniel sat on his apartment floor, the city's hum seeping through the window. Betrayal replayed in his mind like a broken record. He whispered, I can't trust anyone. His chest tightened as despair clawed back into him. Then he remembered Sarah's gratitude, Mark's loyalty, Richard's wisdom, Olivia's reluctant respect. They hadn't abandoned him, not yet. He whispered, Maybe trust isn't gone, maybe I still have allies. The thought lit a fragile spark in his hollow chest. He clenched his fists, whispering, Jason can take everything, but he won't take me. The night that began with defeat ended with the faint stirrings of defiance. Daniel gathered his scattered notes, his voice firm as he told Mark, It's time to rebuild. Mark grinned with renewed hope. Finally, the fire's back. They worked late into the night, plans scrawled across whiteboards, coffee cups piling. Daniel's energy was raw but real, his mind sharper than despair had allowed. He said, If Jason and Ethan think they've won, they're wrong. Mark clapped his shoulder. Then let's show them. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt like himself again. As hours passed, Mark leaned back, exhaustion in his eyes. You can't do it alone, Daniel. Daniel nodded. Then we'll do it together. The weight shifted as Mark's role grew beyond friend. He was now a partner in the fight. Their laughter broke through fatigue as they remembered why they began. For the first time, hope didn't feel naive. It felt possible. The day of the pitch arrived. Olivia sat at the head of the table, stern and unreadable. Ethan appeared across the room, smug in his dominance. Daniel's heart pounded, but his voice was steady. This isn't about survival. It's about vision. He spoke with fire, presenting strategies rebuilt from ashes. Olivia leaned forward, intrigued. Ethan smirked, but shifted uncomfortably as Daniel's passion cut through the room. For the first time, the power tilted. The confrontation erupted after the meeting. Daniel cornered Jason, voice sharp. You betrayed me for scraps of Ethan's table. Jason sneered. I chose survival. Daniel stepped closer, his voice ablade. No, you chose cowardice. Jason faltered as Daniel's fury surged. You can steal my work, but not my will. That's the difference between us. For the first time, Jason looked shaken, his mask cracking under Daniel's fire. The climax came with Daniel's final words in the pitch room. He faced Olivia, Ethan, and Jason, his voice unwavering. You can strip me of money, partners, and power, but you will never strip me of resilience. The room went silent. Olivia tapped her pen, her lips curving into a subtle smile. Ethan's smug grin faded. Jason looked pale, defeated. Daniel stood tall, not because he had won everything back, but because he had chosen to fight without fear. For the first time he owned the room completely. Daniel stood by his apartment window at dawn, the city alive with fresh light. He whispered, "I've carried so much pain, but it won't define me anymore." His mind replayed every failure and betrayal, but now those memories felt like lessons rather than chains. He saw the scars in his reflection, and instead of shame, he felt strength. His breath steadied as he admitted aloud, "I survived." The streets below pulsed with ambition, yet he no longer feared being left behind. Every scar, every loss had forged him into someone stronger than the man who first started this journey. He whispered, "This is just the beginning," and felt the sunrise warm his face with fragile hope. Olivia invited Daniel into her office, her tone sharper than her smile. "You've shown grit, Daniel. Investors want grit." Daniel replied calmly, "Then let's build with integrity, not fear." She studied him, fingers tapping her pen. "Integrity is expensive." Daniel leaned forward. So is mediocrity. I'd rather fail with vision than succeed with compromise." Olivia paused, her eyes narrowing before softening. "Perhaps I underestimated you." For the first time, her approval felt real, not transactional. Daniel said quietly, "Then let's prove them wrong, together." At a small team gathering, Daniel raised his glass. "We may not be many, but we are enough." Mark smiled, clapping him on the back. Sarah whispered, "You gave us hope again." Daniel looked around, seeing the faces of those who had stayed when leaving would have been easier. His voice carried warmth. "You're the reason this dream still breathes." The room filled with laughter and clinking glasses, a sound Daniel thought he had lost forever. For once, success wasn't about numbers or prestige. It was about people standing together, despite everything. He whispered, "We are still here." Emily sat across from Daniel in their family kitchen once more, her voice gentler this time. "I was wrong. You've proven me wrong." Daniel smiled faintly. "I never wanted to fight you, Emily. I just needed you to see why I couldn't stop." She reached for his hand, her eyes soft with pride. "I see it now. You were fighting for more than yourself." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "For us. For everyone who believed, even when it hurt." The silence that followed was filled with understanding instead of tension, their bond mended by the fire of struggle. Ethan sat in his gleaming office, watching news of Daniel's comeback. His smirk faded as the anchor said, "The underdog rises again." "Alone," Ethan muttered, "impossible." Meanwhile, Daniel stood outside the same skyscraper, no longer as a broken man, but as one who had endured. He whispered, "Your empire can't scare me anymore." The power had shifted, not because Daniel had destroyed Ethan, but because he had reclaimed himself. Strength wasn't measured in empires or wealth, but in resilience that refused to bow. Daniel sat quietly in his rebuilt office, papers scattered, yet his mind calm. He whispered, "Every loss carried me here." The chaos of rebuilding no longer overwhelmed him, it energized him. He thought of the scars etched into his journey, and smiled faintly. "Scars are proof that I fought." The hum of his team outside was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. For the first time in years he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt alive. Mark entered the office with a grin. "We've got our first new deal, Daniel." Daniel laughed, relief and pride mixing. "We did it, Mark. We really did it." Mark raised his hand for a shake, but Daniel pulled him into a firm hug. "Couldn't have done it without you." Mark's voice cracked as he whispered, "You finally let me carry the weight with you." Their bond had become more than loyalty. It was brotherhood sealed in fire. Richard joined them later, leaning on his cane. "So, you've finally learned what I've been telling you all along." Daniel chuckled softly. "That failure is a teacher, not a coffin." Richard's eyes gleamed with pride. "And what has it taught you?" Daniel replied firmly, "That resilience is the greatest currency of all." Richard nodded, a satisfied smile settling on his face. "Then you're richer than most men alive." Their laughter filled the room, bridging generations of wisdom and growth. Emily visited the office, her eyes wide at the bustle. "You've built something beautiful," she said softly. Daniel hugged her tightly, whispering, "I couldn't have kept going without you." She laughed through tears. "I doubted you, but you proved me wrong." Daniel smiled warmly. "You gave me strength, even in your doubt." For once, her skepticism had turned into unwavering belief, and their bond carried no shadows, only pride. As the sun set, Daniel stood on the rooftop of his building, gazing across the city. His voice was calm yet powerful. "They tried to bury me, but they forgot I was a seed." The skyline glowed with orange fire, a reminder that endings could be beginnings. He whispered, "This journey broke me, remade me, and gave me strength no one can steal." His chest rose with steady breaths, and for the first time he felt untouchable. The story that began with ruin ended with rebirth, his silhouette strong against the horizon.